Hello and welcome to the Empire State Trail Weekly Update, a look at the latest news from across the Erie Canalway and Empire State Trail. And this is the update for June 28th to July 4th, 2026. And let's be careful out there, folks. It's supposed to be a very hot, humid week with heat indices in the hundreds with very high humidity midweek. So be careful if you're out there riding. Take plenty of breaks, hydrate, get out of the sun, use your sunscreen, and all that good stuff you know about. And our picture today is one of the many aqueducts and fine structures you'll see along the Erie Canalway Trail. This is the Jamesville Creek Aqueduct over in DeWitt. And make sure if you're riding across it to get off and walk down the trail, the little side path there. Look out for the poison ivy, but get down at creek level and see what you're riding across, because these structures are lovely. All right, so let's look at trail closures. And the empiretrail.newyork.gov site has been updated as of June 24th. So they still have the closure there, the warning there in Manhattan for all you people in New York City area. Not too many more changes in the Erie Canalway Trail. I'll look at those on the Cycle the Canalway Trail map. They have added a note in Cohoes for the Champlain Valley. The city of Cohoes has begun a resurfacing work on the trail on Van Schack Island. So you'll be routed onto Delaware Ave, so just be careful about that. So let's take a look at the Cycle the Canalway Trail from our friends at Parks and Trails New York. And we have the ongoing trail closure there in Buffalo at LaSalle Park or Ralph Wilson Park. We have a couple projects going on in the Rochester area. The ongoing closure there at the Aqueduct in Durhamville. Some work out in the Utica area. They don't show anything on the Hudson Valley. And they're not even showing the work there that's notified in Van Schack Island. Once again, the warning here, the caution here is Parks and Trails pays a lot of attention to what's going on with the Erie Canalway, and they leave it to the Hudson Valley people and stuff like that for notices along the Hudson Valley and the Champlain Valley. So they will post them if they have time, but if you don't see it there, it doesn't mean there's not an issue. So this past week on the Facebook page there was a question about the detour on the Dunn Memorial Bridge in Albany. A lot of riders, when they come in, they're finishing their trail here in Jennings Landing. They're taking their pictures at the end of the trail, mile point 0 or mile point 350, however you want to look at it. Then they got to get over to the railroad station here in Rensselaer. And you have to cross over the Dunn Memorial Bridge. And there was a question about a detour because back in 2023, there was something happened. There was either a collapse or they took it out. There was a pedestrian walkway, and it's no longer there. And according to Erica Snyder from Parks and Trails, this is now a permanent detour that they have built into the for pedestrians and cyclists to get across the Dunn Memorial Bridge. So way back here, when you leave Jennings Park, you have to cross over and kind of get in the middle between Quay Street and the off-ramp here and make your way down on the other side of the Jersey barriers. And we can take a look at this because if you're a cyclist, you don't like riding opposing traffic, but here's what it looks like. So here's the old walkway, which is no longer there. And here's the Jersey barrier separating the trail. And so you're going to be riding, and here's the old walkway. You can try, that would be kind of like that movie Speed, where you can try to, get going real fast and make that jump, but probably discouraged. Somebody will frown on that. You only have to get to here. You could do that. Especially electric motorbikes, you could do that. Anyway, so here's your detour, the permanent detour. That's what you got to be looking out for. So just be aware of that if you got to get to the other side of the river in Albany. And let's move on to news. So in news, this is not anything to do with the Empire State Trail, but I thought it was interesting. This popped up in my news feeds. Metro East cyclists get new bridge, longer trail to explore St. Clair and Madison counties. And this trail has 51 bridges and 22 tunnels to keep riders from busy roadways. This represents the 73rd structure that carries a trail safely over creeks, roads, streets, and other obstacles. That's really amazing. And that's a heck of a bridge. And so it's, if the will's there, I guess if the money's there, they can do it. They can build bridges to keep us safe. I can think of a bridge in Montezuma that would benefit the trail, but we'll let it go there. This is also something that came up just under 2 hours from New York City. The world's longest elevated footbridge is throwing a massive July 4th fireworks party. So here's your caution. If you're planning on riding through the Hudson Valley and you're wanting to go over the walkway over the Hudson July 4th, you're probably going to have a heck of a time getting across there. There's going to be one big party. So just be aware of that's going on. And also in the Hudson Valley, this is from the UK News, Pro Cycling UK, cycle in the Hudson Valley and the Catskills, why this deserves a place on your riding list. So that was nice to see. Talks about the Empire State Trail and all the other trails that are going on in the Hudson Valley. So nice to see it in the news over in the UK. And speaking of the Hudson Valley and cycling resources, this week I threw up on the Empire State Trail Facebook page a list of all the resources that you might want to check out. There's always somebody going on there, what maps do you use? What resources do you use? So here's the key ones that we think. And people seem to echo that, yeah, they use these a lot. But the one that popped up, Hudson Valley Bike, or Bike to Hudson Valley here, is not just for the Empire State Trail, but all the Hudson Valley. And this is a nice resource. If you're looking for something to do, you're from New York City, you want to get away, there's a nice overview of all the resources, all the places to go. So you may want to check this out. Bike to Hudson Valley. So in my ongoing quest to understand who has control over the Empire State Trail, why things happen, why things don't happen, if you have a complaint, who do you go to? If you want to make change, who do you go to? And so you start asking questions, and if there was an article a couple weeks back about adding 200 miles to the Empire State Trail. Can you do that? Because the governor's initiative in 2017 said the Empire State Trail is 750 miles long. Well, who would make that decision to add 200 miles of Long Island Trail to the Empire State Trail? Or is it just a lateral trail? Or is it a connector trail? You ask questions and nobody seems to know. So I took it upon myself, because this is the way my brain works, to create a flow chart. And here's a cleaned up version of the flow chart. And here we have the Empire State Trail at the center. And you have the Erie Canalway Trail, you have the Hudson Valley Greenway Trail, and you have the Champlain Valley Trail. And you can see the lengths and how much is axle trail and how much is on-road, off-road there. Up here you have the governor, Governor Cuomo in 2017 said, finish this trail by 2020. And he directed the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation to complete the trail. And they did, to their credit. It's mostly off-road, but there's a lot of on-road still. So you have the state trails planner, Chris Morris, works under Kathy Mosier, and he has control of all parks and trails, statewide. Thousands of miles, hundreds of parks, probably thousands of parks across the state that he has control over. so, or some say over. You got the governor, you got the legislative branch, and of course they're supposedly co-equal here, and so they control the budget. So they're going to be handing out money or not handing out money, regardless of what happens with the governor. Over here you have New York State DOT, and they have control of the roads, bridges, the New York State bike routes, all that stuff, and their control is made through the regional offices and the pedestrian coordinators who donate, or not donate, but dedicate some time to bicycle and pedestrian efforts. It's a part-time job, my understanding. They get some money from federal grants. You got the transportation alternative programs and the air quality money that comes from the feds. And then you get some money, most of the money comes from the legislature here. Over here you have NYPA, New York Power Authority, who controls the canals. Their big thing is they have no tax money, and they control the New York State Canal Corp. This falls under them. They have 150 miles of trail between the Erie Canalway Trail and the Champlain Valley Trail. They have no trail and no ownership of anything in the Hudson Valley south of Albany. And they do get some money from the budget. My understanding, it's $50 million in budget for all canal needs, trail, lock work, all that stuff. And the accumulated deficit in needed money is actually in the billions for what needs to be done with the canals. So they're holding things together the best they can. Then over here you have your local owners, the other big owners. So you have these guys here are controlling, and they have some ownership. You have Canal Corp with a big ownership. You have DOT with a big ownership. And then you have your local owners down here, your towns, villages, cities, counties, working under 25-year agreements. And they're working under local taxes and whatever grants they can get. And this kind of all goes, one question I had was, how can you get a sign installed? Who do you ask? This is what it takes. You got to understand all this just to get a sign installed, right? You have your Hudson Valley Greenway, which controls everything south of Albany. They have 14 counties. They get money from New York State budget, Greenway funds, federal dollars, private dollars. Over here, you got the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor. They give local grants and promotion, but they don't give money for actual trail construction, stuff like that. They're going to give money to events. They get money from federal dollars, the 501c3 Heritage Fund, private donations. So they're a lot like these guys over here, except they don't have control of any trail. These guys actually control the trail. These guys just are kind of on the fringe helping to promote the trail. And then you got Parks and Trails New York, who is your advocacy organization. Hopefully you're a member of them because they are doing a lot of work. They are your go-betweens between the Canal Corp and your trail users. They are your go-betweens probably between the Office of Parks and Recreation and DOT and your Hudson Valley. I mean, they're kind of in there trying to do what they can. They got a limited staff. They got a limited budget, and they got a lot. And they're all parks and trails. Again, they're not just the Erie Canalway Trail. They are doing it all. And then here's your trail users, and I got this as a dotted line here because they're kind of, this is your final user, and they're interacting with all these organizations, but they have no official say. There's no one organization that's speaking for trail users. In the old days, we used to have the Canalway Trail Association of New York. We tried, it was like a go-between volunteer effort, have a little gravitas. You worked with Parks and Trails. I don't know if that's still going on. I see the name pop up every once in a while, but I don't see them mentioned really. But I think that's the missing link because, if you want a sign installed, you say, okay, you ask somebody up here in your government and they tell the DOT to install the sign, and it goes down to the regional office, and then they hand it over to their sign guys, and their sign guys go out, and they're not bicyclists, so they install the sign according to regulations that may or may not have any benefit on the trail users, right? So, it's same thing with canals. Canals is probably a little more responsive, but their main focus is canals. And unless you're a bicyclist, you probably don't understand why we're saying this is a hazard. This needs to be cleaned up. We need more here. And certainly with the local owners, the parks or the trails, you would think you have a little more home rule, but not always, because these guys are elected officials. If they are anti-bicycle, if they're anti-trail, if they're anti-parks, they can do a lot of damage just by doing nothing. And so many of them are great. I'll give them that. Many organizations, many towns, but there are some who just don't want nothing to do with the trail. So anyway, this is what I'm trying to understand. I'm going to take a deep dive into here and see how many miles the local owners actually control, and break that out. But anyway, this is ongoing. If you have any thoughts on this, let me know. If you think I'm got an arrow going the wrong way here, let me know. I would love to have more input on this. What this accomplishes, other than my understanding and perhaps your understanding, is probably very little, but it's a fun exercise. All right, let's move on. Okay. And turning to the calendar, we are already into July. Hard to believe. We have a lot of activities going on, 3rd, 4th. The 4th of July is a Saturday, so expect things to be very busy on the trail. There's going to be a lot of people out. If you're just planning on riding through and you're going through places like Fairport, Pittsford, all these places that are kind of built up along the trail, you're going to run into a lot of traffic. So don't expect to be moving too fast. Again, the walkway over the Hudson fireworks, you're going to see a lot of disruption to trail usage, through trail usage. We have the Cycle of the Erie Canalway, or Cycle of the Erie, going on from the 11th to the 18th. I have 19th, but I think it ends on the 18th. So that'll be a lot of people starting in Buffalo, going to Albany. You'll have 600 riders. The museums and the stops are all kind of geared up for this. So don't be surprised if you pull up somewhere and there's a line for a bathroom, or there's a lot of activity going on. It won't impact your camping, because camping, they have designated areas out of the way from what normal trail users will be using, so you don't have a problem there. But just expect to see a lot more people along the roadways and trails that week. And then we have the Tonawanda Canal Fest from the 19th to the 26th. Not quite sure what the impacts out there will be, but expect to see some trail users impact. And then Brockport is August 1st. So that's the calendar for July. And that's it for this Empire State Trail Weekly. Please note that this is an independent weekly update and is not affiliated with New York State, the Canal Corporation, or any official trail agency. Information is based on publicly available sources and rider reports. And if you found this useful, remember to give it a like and subscribe and share it. Give us your thoughts, comment, all that stuff. Help us out. Let us know what you're interested in. We'll do some deep dives into it. And we'll see you next week.